Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our live show Game Theory Analysis. Today we are going live on Formula One, where we will bring you the latest and greatest news from the exciting world of motorsports. I'm your host Abdul Raza, and tonight we have a special guest with us, Zaviyar, who is a Formula One fanatic and has been following this sport for quite a while now. How are you, Zaviyar?
I'm fine, Alhamdulillah. How are you?
Yeah, same here. So, talking about the race, the 2023 Formula One season promises to be one of the most exciting and unpredictable ones in the recent years. With new
Yeah,
rules and regulations, we can expect some thrilling races and intense rivalries between the teams and the drivers. Two of many races have been completed, which include Bahrain and Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. We saw some thrilling and fueled with fire races in our season openers. There have been some ups and downs for some teams, but we will it to our guest for discussing it over with. So, for the viewers, as you all know, that our show is divided into different segments. So, let's start off with our top stories for today.
so starting off, I think we should start with what has happened
Yeah.
since the start of the season. And it's safe to say that there's been an incredible Red Bull dominance. As Red Bull have managed to have a 1-2 for both the races. Um, Max Verstappen once again showing why he's the best driver in the world at this point. And RB19 certainly being an extremely quick car, showing extreme straight line speed and something that is currently unmatched by the other 9 teams across the grid, to the point where Lewis Hamilton even said that this might be the fastest car that we've ever seen in Formula One, while he himself has driven the W11.
Okay. So Xavier, there have been some rumors, or we've already seen the few races that have happened. There are some reasons the Mercedes had a slow start to Formula One 2023. Having suffered the first
Um,
winless season of his storied career last year, Hamilton had been hoping to return to title-winning contention in the pursuit of a record eighth World Championship in 2023, but finished no higher than fifth in the first two races of the new campaign, which were actually the Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. What has happened in the Mercedes camp, and what actually has what are the reasons behind this slow start to the Formula One 2023 for Mercedes?
well, as you said, last year they had struggled with a lot of porpoising issues. But this year, I think it's just been a lack of confidence due to a substantially bad last year where they had finished third in the Constructors' Championship. But I think due to the lack of confidence, Toto Wolff himself, the team president, coming out and saying that Mercedes is not where we are supposed to be. We're still 7 to 8 races behind where we want to be, which you're possibly saying that you could throw away another season for Lewis Hamilton's career, which could definitely hurt his chances of getting that eighth World Drivers' Championship. And that could, spark a new generation coming towards Mercedes, where they might be thinking, is Lewis Hamilton still the same driver he was 3 or 4 years ago, with Mick Schumacher already being there, set for a replacement possibly, or even Lando Norris? We've seen him struggle with McLaren, his contract ending in 2025. That could certainly, cause a lot of problems for Lewis Hamilton, as he needs to show that he can perform in this car, as George Russell, his counterpart, has been performing really well in this car.
Okay, so what happened to Daniel Ricciardo? Aussie Formula One legend Alan Jones has made the sensational call that Daniel has been too focused on outside interest and will never race at Formula One level again. That is a big statement, actually.
Well, in this day and age, with social media, booming across all platforms, it's, people love to post, especially celebrities love to post about what they're doing, how their lifestyle is going. So you might see this side that Daniel Ricciardo is spending more of his time towards leisure in comparison to practicing F1. I mean, he's an 8-time race winner. possibly the greatest Aussie driver ever. And he's a reserve driver now. He's entering the twilight of his career. And last year, we saw the struggles he had with McLaren. I think he only had 2-point finishes, which, if you're in F1 and you're driving for a top five team, it's quite unacceptable. So one might say that he's not
Yeah.
focusing enough, but we never really know what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. So moving on, Hamilton's problems with Mercedes, we will dig deeper and deeper into that. The seven-time Formula One champion Lewis Hamilton's contract with Mercedes will be under scrutiny recently, and especially with the difficulties the Brackley-based squad are facing and his contract due to expire at the end of this year. According to a Formula One reporter, Hamilton's reported 60 million contract could tempt the team to look for replacements. Is that a true rumor or?
Toto Wolff has said that, look, personally speaking, that since we've seen Fernando Alonso at the tender age of 40, still driving at an incredible race, he's gotten 2 podiums this season with Aston Martin's completely surprising rise. I think it's fair to say that right now, as we speak, Hamilton will still be given another 2 seasons. He'll be given till the end of his contract. But certainly, if he's not putting in the performances that are required of a team like Mercedes, then there are certain definite options that Mercedes can go out and check in the free agency market. Like I said, with the likes of Lando Norris, Mick Schumacher would have matured more than, or they can even look elsewhere, maybe someone from NASCAR, etc.
Okay. Uh, so the Australian Grand Prix will be starting on Sunday, 2nd of April, from 10 a.m. forward at Melbourne Grand Prix circuit. We will be discussing about. We will be analyzing the pre-race statistics and what are the driver standings right now. In a few seconds, we will be having driver standings before the Australian GP on our screens. So we will be asking you, Zaviyar, how do you think the teams will go into the next race coming up?
Well, I think it's safe to say that there'll be another Red Bull dominance. It'll be interesting to see I would personally say that Verstappen would be on top as he is the number one driver at Red Bull. I think it's safe to say that. I think Aston Martin, with the amazing start that they've had, with Fernando Alonso being Fernando Alonso, and Lance Stroll has certainly become a much better driver, even though there were some speculations that he had an injury right before the start of the season, but he has certainly proved all the doubters wrong. So I think it's fair to say that Red Bull and Aston Martin will have a great race going into this Australian Grand Prix. You
So
can
here
see
are
that.
our 2023. Yeah.
Yeah, as you know that Aston Martin and Mercedes are tied for second in the constructor standings with 38 points, and Red Bull have already run away with it. So it'll be very interesting to see because I think it seems safe to say that it's going to be a tough battle for second between Aston Martin and Mercedes. So it'll be very interesting to see how the drivers tend to, because you know that in Mercedes there's no real number one driver. So there could be some sort of problems that could be caused in the Mercedes dugout, while Aston Martin has a much more cohesiveness in their drivers.
So all the teams that we are seeing right now on our screens, many of them are making changes to their cars and complementing the race tracks and other things. Which teams have the biggest, or you can say that most attractive changes in this year's season for the 2023 races?
I mean, it's fair to say Red Bull. Their engine is by far the best. And actually, when you look at DRS, Red Bull are able to extract at least 5 to 6 more kilometers than other cars due to their end at the DRS. So it's definitely a huge advantage as the straight line speed is completely unmatched compared to other cars. We've seen that while cars are almost 0.8 seconds ahead, Red Bull are still able to completely close that gap. We saw during the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, at one point, Max Verstappen started at P15, but by lap 25th, I believe, he was P2. So it shows that the engine success and the horsepower in general, I mean, horsepower is not the right term, but in general, Red Bull is absolutely flying. And so is Aston Martin. Aston Martin, using Mercedes engine, are actually using it much better than Mercedes themselves. And that's actually quite interesting, as the Mercedes manufacturers have said that whoever will be more successful by, I believe, the Azerbaijan GP, they will be receiving the much more in-depth engines. So it's an interesting battle between those two. One disappointing start to the season for sure is for Ferrari. Charles Leclerc in the Bahrain Grand Prix, the first race of the season, had an engine failure and his engine has already been replaced. You can only do that twice in an F1 season. So he already received a grid penalty in Saudi Arabia, which caused him to start at P10. So Ferrari are definitely looking a bit shaky at the start of the season. It'll be quite interesting to see if they can somehow maneuver a comeback.
I was coming to that point actually. The Ferraris that you have mentioned, what has happened to Ferrari in the couple of races that we have had this year and the last year too? Can you have some insight on that?
I think last year Ferrari were just a bit of a surprise for everyone. We didn't expect anyone, especially Charles Leclerc, to win those races that he did at the start of the year. We expected another Mercedes and Ferrari dominance, sorry, Red Bull dominance. But I think with Matteo Binotto also going as team president, Ferrari are going through new changes. I think their driver lineup still needs a bit more time to mature. Charles Leclerc has proven that he is no doubt one of the best drivers in F1. Carlos Sainz has his inconsistencies. Sometimes you can say that this guy could easily win a World Driver Championship, and sometimes you should think he should be driving for Haas. So it's quite up and down for Ferrari. You cannot necessarily make a judgment as of them right now. It's still very early on in the season. 2 out of 23 races have happened. There's a long time to go. Anything could happen. But so far, it seems that Ferrari would probably be lucky if they can get that fourth position in the Constructors' Championship.
Okay, so moving on, Nico Hülkenberg is planning a full program in Ferrari's simulator in Maranello this year to help his return to Formula One. How do you see that?
I think it's a great initiative. Ferrari is doing a good thing by helping Haas in this situation. It's a great initiative for Nico Hülkenberg because, as I said, it's been a long time. He's been a reserve driver for a very, very long time. Last year, he had come in for Sebastian Vettel when he had COVID-19. So I think it's a great chance for Nico Hülkenberg to finally get back into the groove. It's actually a very funny partnership at Haas with Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen, as they have had some bad blood between them in the past years. So it'll be interesting to see how they combine as a pair. Haas haven't had the best of starts this year, but I think there's a lot of potential in that team. So I think there's definitely a chance that they could rack up some decent points.
Okay. Matt Gallagher, co-host of P1 with Matt and Tommy, he was speaking and he said that Charles Leclerc will not win a world championship with Ferrari. How do you see this statement of Matt?
I think it's a bit of a rash statement. I think it's something that has not been thought through because Ferrari have shown that they're, of course, a very successful Formula One team with the success of Michael Schumacher. So it's fair to say that Charles Leclerc definitely has the potential. We all know that on his day, Charles Leclerc could beat anyone in a decent car. So I think if Ferrari can manage to, assort him as the pure number one driver, and if they can give him a proper race-winning car, something that can compete with the RB19, then I wouldn't say that Leclerc is that far off of potentially challenging for a championship.
Okay. And another news that was roaming around was that Aston Martin will evaluate after the Australian Grand Prix whether it needs to rethink about its wing choices to help counter the Red Bull's immense top speed advantage in Formula One. Is that right statement or no?
Yeah, it is. I think Aston Martin have seen that they are still quite behind Red Bull in terms of race pace. In the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, Fernando Alonso was 20 seconds behind Max Verstappen. Oh, sorry, 5 seconds behind Max Verstappen. So it was, you can tell that it was quite a big of a difference. So definitely Aston Martin have improved, no doubt, from being a mid-table club to someone who can definitely challenge for that second position on the grid. So Fernando Alonso, absolutely unbelievable. At this age, the way he's been driving, it has been quite phenomenal. Something that we have not expected, considering he just moved on to a new team. So it's pretty surprising seeing Aston Martin at top, and it's bringing a new, fresh air to F1. So I think they will definitely look into some changes into the construction of the car to see if they could somehow match the RB19. But they have to be careful that they don't screw this up, because this, whatever's been going on so far, is working. So as the old famous saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I think Aston Martin have to be very careful with how they manage to design the new car. So it'll be very interesting to see how it moves on.
So we have a question from one of the viewer. Mercedes have flawed their car concept once again. What do you guys think on them completely scrapping the current concept in favor of a new design? You will have to answer that.
I think it's pretty rash, too early. I believe it's been two races. Mercedes have still, I mean, they're still second in the Constructors' Championship, tied with Aston Martin. So I think they should still, it's too early to scrap. If they can still somehow push and try to get that second, it'll be interesting to see how the Australian Azerbaijan Grand Prix goes. If Mercedes can prove that they can stay close to Aston Martin or potentially even be better than them, then I think it's safe to say that Mercedes could definitely fight and be comfortable in that second position for the Constructors' Championship. Because we all know that Red Bull, at this point, I don't think anyone can compete with Red Bull. I think it's safe to say that number two is the best possible outcome for any other team on this grid. The Red Bull at this point are too dominant. They're going through their Mercedes point. So I think it's safe to say that whoever gets number second, that could be the biggest possible win that they could achieve this season.
So we have another question. Which player is going to win this season, and what's your prediction?
I think it's safe to say Max Verstappen will win his third championship in a row. Utter dominance from the Dutchman. His driving skill, some might say his style is a bit too aggressive and he doesn't leave enough space in the corners, but it's safe to say that there is not many drivers that have come through F1 as talented as he is. I mean, he is unbelievably quick, and no doubt Red Bull have given him all the support and all the backing that he requires and all the confidence that this guy could definitely break the record of Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher when it comes to 7 World Drivers' Championship. This guy is absolutely unbelievable. His race pace is insane. His overtaking abilities is second to none. The way this guy can just go into corners, it just reminds me of Daniel Ricciardo. I mean, it's absolutely insane how good this guy is.
Okay. We will having more questions. Was it surprising to see Alonso doing podiums?
Yes, of course. Because obviously him moving on to a new car, and come on, like he's 40. So you don't expect someone at the age of 40, considering how physically brawling F1 is. So it's definitely interesting and quite surprising that he is getting podiums. But then again, it's Fernando Alonso, a completely natural born given talent. He's proved it by winning 2 World Drivers' Championships. So Aston Martin this season could definitely, they've already have a big boost, but I hope that they don't throw it away. They're basically like Haas last season when Kevin Magnussen finished P5 as well, but they're just a bit better this year. But I think it's safe to say that Aston Martin could definitely be on the rise. And if Fernando Alonso can groom Lance Stroll into becoming a much better driver, then the future of Aston Martin could be very, very, very well indeed.
Okay. So moving on to our next segment, stats attack. Zaviyar, we will be having some insights into the performance of the teams and drivers in the preseason testing. Let's see some exciting stats which will around all these years in Formula One.
Sure.
The stats. So the Fernando Alonso has the highest number of starts in Formula One. His number stands at 357.
Well, that just shows the longevity of Fernando Alonso. If any of y'all had watched the race in Saudi Arabia, at the start of turn one, he was actually going into first place. He had an absolutely amazing start,
Yeah,
and it was quite honestly breathtaking. And of course, the commentary in F1 has always been up to high standards, so it certainly was a goosebumps moment. And it just shows how dominant and how amazing Fernando Alonso has been, and it shows his availability. It shows that throughout his career, he's never been one to fall to illness or miss out a race due to any sort of sickness or injury. So it's shown that he is always taking care of his body and shown that he's always ready to give his 100% for the team.
so another stats attack will be given to us in a bit. Lewis Hamilton, 19, stands second for having the most title hat tricks. He is beaten by Michael, who has 22 hat tricks. Lewis Hamilton
Well,
was
I mean,
a way better
yeah, go
player
ahead. Sorry.
in the past. Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah, you can continue.
I couldn't
Continue,
hear you. Sorry.
continue.
Oh, okay. I mean, if you're close to Michael Schumacher in any sort of a stat, it's quite exciting. And I mean, Lewis Hamilton, my personal opinion, he's the GOAT. And, having 19 title hat tricks is quite unbelievable. But then again, Michael Schumacher's dominance in the early 90s and late 90s and early 2000s, having 22 hat tricks, that's quite unbelievable.
Okay, so that ends the second segment of the show. Our third segment, Racer Spotlight, is where we focus on one of the drivers and discuss their career achievements. Uh, Today's racer will be Max Verstappen. As we all know, he is a big fan following. Zaviyar to shed some light on his career and achievements.
Well, Max Verstappen came in F1 in 2015, and he was the youngest driver ever to win a F1 race, and certainly saying it's just been uphill since then. This guy is absolutely phenomenal. His dominance will reign on supreme for a long time, and I think he will go down as the greatest driver to have ever raced in Formula One. The dominance that this man can produce at this young age is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, talking it to the fact that he was P15 in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix and to finish P2 and to be P2 by lap 25th is absolutely breathtaking. Um, I mean, he's obviously had his lows in his career as well when Daniel Ricciardo and him had his fight and had their flaws basically, and they were more focused on being the number one driver rather than helping Red Bull be a better team, as we saw in Azerbaijan when they had that big crash and that cost Red Bull 40 plus points in 2018. And that was a big moment at Red Bull because that was the point where Red Bull had to decide if they wanted to continue with Max Verstappen as their number one driver, and that had eventually caused Daniel Ricciardo to leave, which was a big moment in Daniel Ricciardo's career as well, him moving on to Renault from then. So Max Verstappen's career has obviously been absolutely amazing. His start has been absolutely incredible at such a young age. He's always been proven to be a top five driver on his day, and now certainly he's the best driver in F1. So it's amazing to see, and him being so young and having the support of the Dutch fans. Every time it's the Dutch Grand Prix, with the Dutch fans singing his song, it's a great atmosphere to be at, and it's certainly a treat to watch.
Okay, thank you for sharing your insights. Our final segment, Prognosticator's Corner, is where we ask our guests for making a bold prediction for any upcoming Formula One event. So, actually, we had done this a few times ago, and we will be asking for making a prediction on any event you like, any future event, Formula One. So, what is your prediction for any event?
I think this season we will see McLaren absolutely flop. I think McLaren will either be ninth or eighth in the constructor standing, and it's just to the fact that they have not been able to produce a race-winning car for a way too long period of time. The confidence, there is no confidence in that dugout. Lando Norris seems that he doesn't want to be there much longer. I think he just wants his contract to end. Yes, they've gotten a new talent in Oscar Piastri, but then again, if they just don't provide him with a car that is able to suit and race with the likes of Alpine. Alpine has certainly shown that they've been a quite dominant car. The French pairing of Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly have been working tremendously for them. Then you have Williams with Nick DeVries, that and Alex Albon. I think they'll pick up a few points here and there. Alfa Romeo with Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas. That's again a wonderful pairing. So I think the lower end of this table could be quite difficult, and I could definitely see McLaren struggling and might even finish ninth in this constructor standings.
That's a very bold prediction. Actually, that McLaren one was actually a quite bold one. So we will be ending our show here. Thank you, Zavia. Actually, we have a question before we go.
Okay.
Thoughts on Ferrari's abysmal start to the season? Can they improve? And will Leclerc consider moving to a new team or wait it out?
I think he'll wait it out for another couple of years, because I think Charles Leclerc still has a lot of belief in Ferrari, and Ferrari have proven that. I think it's fair to say that Leclerc might edge Carlos Sainz to be the number one driver in Formula One. So I think Leclerc will still stick with Ferrari, but if they don't provide a proper car by the next couple of years, maybe another bold prediction, you never know, he might even join Mercedes, because Lewis Hamilton, if he doesn't provide the results, but for that to happen, it's got to be quite shocking, because we all know Lewis Hamilton is an unbelievable driver and he'll probably put in the results. So I think Leclerc will be stuck with Ferrari for a little bit longer than he would want to, but I think in the next couple of years, Ferrari could possibly give him a title winning car.
Okay. So, Zavia, thank you for joining us for the show on Formula One. And we will be lucky to have you again on this show. It was an interactive session with you. So, that marks the end of our show for today. Thank you for watching Game Theory Analysis. We will be having more show on Formula One and more the other sports. So, thank you and Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.